Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Bleav in Bengal podcast. Yours truly, Solomon Wilcox. Later, we have a tremendous guest going to be joining us for the show to help us put this third consecutive season of an 0-2 start into perspective. But first, I want to tell you about Bet Online. It is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything that is football. Bet Online has every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads to bet on during football games. You think you know your stuff? We'll get in on our $200,000 mega contest and pick 5 games against the spread every single week for your chance to win a weekly prize and share in the $200,000 pot. Of course, you can head over to the website and start today. Bet Online. The game starts right here. Now, listen, Cincinnati Bengals fall to the Kansas City Chiefs 25-26. This essentially is a game Cincinnati Bengals could have won. It is a game they should have won. Sometimes you can point to critical errors. No game is ever going to be perfect. But if I could point to 3 things that allowed us to give the game away, gift wrapped for the Kansas City Chiefs, it would have to start with our great quarterback, Joe Burrow. Anytime you fumble the ball or turn it over, bad things can happen. It can go from bad to worse, and that's what happened when Joe Burrow fumbled and they scooped and scored. Cincinnati Bengals are getting ready to go down and add to their lead and pad that lead and put more points on the board. Our defense was playing at a very high level against Patrick Mahomes, who only had 151 passing yards for the game. It was his second lowest total of passing yards for his career. The Bengals picked him off 3 times, even though 1 interception was called back. We still got 3 turnovers because we forced a steal fumble from the fullback, and then the other 2 interceptions did count. So the Bengals defense was playing at a high level. You can't afford to fumble the ball and allow the defense to score because the offense is too good in Kansas City to begin with. And then I thought the Jamar Chase penalty when he gained 15 yards going against our offense, we ended up having to settle for the field goal. Looked like we were going in for a scoring drive there until Jamar Chase blew his stack. Look, I get it, Jamar. Dealing with a lot these days, my friend. I get it, man. If I had to pay for that kind of insurance policy and make that kind of premium payment, I'd be hot too. So, I as much as I love you, I got to point these things out. It was not good for the team. And with your quarterback and your boy, Joe Burrow, tells you to calm it down, you got to calm it down. By the way, no officials have been instructed by the league office to never throw the flag on what anybody would deem to be a hip drop tackle. Those penalties are too subjective that the league is going to deal with them internally. They'll call the player. The player will be fined, but they don't want to make those an on-the-field call unless it's clearly blatant, but they're trying to handle those during the week after the fact so that a penalty flag does not have any input on the outcome of the game. So you're never going to get a penalty flag on one of those hip drop tackles. Lastly, 4th and 16. Need I say more? Play the ball, not the man. Cannot afford a pass interference on 4th and 16. You knock the ball down. Game over. Cincinnati Bengals win, and Joe Burrow is now 4-1 in his 5 games against Patrick Mahomes. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Bleav in Bengal podcast. Yours truly, Solomon Wilcoxon, right now joined by Cincinnati Bengals beat writer for the Inquirer, Charlie Goldsmith, joining us on the show, bringing us all kinds of wisdom and insights. Charlie, first of all, how you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Hey, look, I got to tell you, all hearts across the Queen City broke during this Kansas City Chiefs game. We played well enough to win the game. You might say we did win one game. We beat ourselves, it seems like, in that game. We played very well in spurts. We would lose that game 25-26. In the end, what were the point of emphasis? What were your takeaways after listening to the coaches and listening to some of the players after the game? What were some of the takeaways as to why the Bengals left Kansas City without a win on Sunday?
So there were some things that were in their control. There were some things the Chiefs did, and then there were things that were in the Bengals' control that maybe weren't quite X's and O's. And starting with that, Jamar Chase's penalty, everything that went down on 4th and 16, maybe less so X's and O's and just guys being in positions that the Bengals are counting them on having success in and making the most of. Yeah. There are things the Chiefs did that all you can do is tip your cap. There's nothing you can do on that touchdown to Rashee Rice down the sideline. The way Chris Jones destroyed one screen after another. Ooh. I tip my cap on kind of the fumble return for a touchdown and the look they showed the Bengals there, and then the 3rd down screen. But then there are some things from an X's and O's perspective that were in the Bengals' control as well. The theme of this rivalry that the Bengals have to fix the most, they got to fix their red zone offense against Kansas City. Kansas City always seems to have something they're not expecting down there. And there were some other situations that came up as well where the Bengals could have, a couple key drops, pass protection pickups, a decision or two by Burrow. There were definitely some things in their control. But I will say overall, I think the Bengals outplayed Kansas City.
Exactly. Even on our not so best day, Cincinnati Bengals outplayed the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, the one thing that we should take away from that is this thing called, because look, Super Bowl is in the air. For Cincinnati Bengals fans, we believe we can win a Super Bowl. And I believe that Super Bowl teams have a certain pedigree about themselves. The number one thing for championship teams is you don't beat yourself. And that's where I think that's our next area of growth. And I want to start with you because I know you had a chance to talk to the coaches. You had a chance to talk to the players. Jamar Chase was uncharacteristically frustrated. I'm going to go with that. He thought it should have been a hip drop tackle. I've talked to people at the league office. The hip drop tackle is not something, even if it was, and I don't think this was a case of a hip drop tackle, but even if it was, those calls aren't made on the field. They're trying to get that out of our game, but that's going to be determined in New York. Players are going to be fined heavily, right? During the week, they're going to get a letter. And if they're repeat offenders, there's going to be heavier consequences. But this is such a subjective call that they're not really asking the officials to legislate it on the field in games. What more can you add to that? And then what more can you add to the fact that it might have been an overreaction for Jamar that might have showed that there's other things percolating here?
Well, first of all, the most important thing to say is you can't have it. You can't commit that penalty. Exactly. And even going all the way back to 2021 when this Bengals team just got good, the secret of that team was the fact that in their first time in those boiler moments, they were fine. They were calm. They were collected. They were acting a certain way. They weren't biting themselves like Chase did on that play. My overall thoughts on Chase and kind of how the team and the locker room and the coaching staff is responding to some clear examples of frustration is that for the first 4 years of his career, Jamar Chase handled everything perfectly. And I don't use that word lightly. I think back to a game against Denver where what he did as a blocker changed that game as a rookie. I think back to all the times where Chase didn't complain for the ball, and he was so good about that. They actually they changed their approach. They're like, actually, we want you to tell us when you think you deserve the ball because you're so good at this. Chase built up a lot of credibility.
Yes.
Now, what he's done over the last 6 months, things that were in his right to do, not participating in training camp, returning to practice and then leaving, not getting off the field for a punt last week, and then this inexcusable penalty. That's not the Jamar Chase who had built up the credibility in the locker room. You have credibility for moments like this, and you could speak to this better than I could. There are guys who maybe can get away with something that not other players can, but you can only get away with things so many times.
That's right.
Before it does become a distraction, before you do cash in a lot of that credibility you've built. So what I'm seeing is Jamar chipping away a bit at the equity he's built up. To me, he still has plenty. He's still a significant leader in the locker room, but he's not acting like it in certain moments, and that chips away at a bit of the foundation that he's built.
I think, and you can speak to this as well, for players now, there's this sense that, particularly when you're working on a rookie contract, he's 3 years, now year 4 into his career, there's this sense that we are all family. We're all in this together. And then when the business stuff starts to happen, when he, according to him, he was told one thing, but another thing happened. The fans had this perception that he was looking for more money. And then he let us know that, no, the team came to me. So when you start having different narratives circulate, and in every case, the player is made to seem like the guy who's going for the money grab. And then there's this game of brinksmanship that we're going to go to the 11th hour before anything's done, and then nothing happens. What we saw was a team that was literally comatose on the field week 1 against the Patriots. It was a distraction that sort of loomed over the entire team. And then week 2, they showed up and, man, they played, but this frustration bubbling beneath the surface. And I can say this, Charlie, because you and I both know Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase are 2 of the closest men on the team. These guys are like this. And you saw the frustration even chipping away at their inability to handle a moment of crises as well as we would expect them to. It was not handled in the best way. So I just want you to kind of speak to that. How much of this is, like, look, it's kind of a chipping away at the team, and the team is having to juggle multiple things all at once.
Let's talk about the front office and ownership side of it. This is something we're talking a lot about, especially right after that deal didn't get done. Like, I made the point of Jamar Chase chipping away at everything that he'd done well. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Make the same case for front office and ownership. They built a Super Bowl contender. They empowered Zach and Lou, and they built an unbelievable core that's had an almost unprecedented run of success here.
That's right.
But then you lose Jesse Bates, and you don't really have an explanation for that. And now you're going to lose T. Higgins. And I still haven't really been given a good explanation for why the Bengals still weren't able to give him a long-term deal that he deserved and that this offense is built around him getting. You had DJ Reader criticizing the front office and ownership on the way out. You had Trey Hendrickson requesting a trade, T requesting a trade. You're starting to see this moment or these moments add up from a front office and ownership perspective where why hasn't the success and momentum that this front office group established, why has that faded and why hasn't that credibility carried over? Just as important as the side I'm talking about this with Chase. Ultimately, I'm a big believer still in Zach and Jamar's relationship. And that's why I'm confident from an on-field perspective that the Bengals will get through this. But it has cost the Bengals actions from both sides.
Yes. Wonderful, wonderful said. And I think, look, I try not to take sides because I love the management. I love the coaching staff. And I really, truly do love and respect these young players because I think they've been as good of a group as we've ever seen. And if we are going to get unprecedented performances on the field, we ought to see unprecedented this mindset that we're going to take care of the players that we've drafted, the ones that we brought in. We ought to see that reach unprecedented levels too, because we've seen unprecedented success on the field. So I think those two things should mirror one another. I also believe, and want to get your thoughts on this in terms of what you're seeing. I just believe that you can't sign everyone. You can't keep them all. We understand that. But what you can do is have better communication so that there's not a miscommunication and you don't have to play this game of brinksmanship where you go to the 11th hour and create this anxiety within the atmosphere. Look, I feel for Zach Taylor here. He's thinking he's going to have his players. 1 minute he has them, next minute he doesn't, because the communication isn't really good, right? You think you're going to have them for opening day. You got no T. Higgins, 0.5 Jamar Chase. I'm thinking from the top down, even if you can't sign a player, there ought to be, hey, come in, let's talk. And, hey, I want you to know how we feel about you around here. And I'm not so sure we're going to always be able to keep you, but we do want to make sure that you know how much you're valued and how much you've been to this franchise. Players can relate to that. They know that if they may have to go. They know this thing isn't forever, but they need to hear it, Charlie. They need to hear it from the people at the very top. And these things matter because football is an emotional game played by emotional people. Especially when you look at the fact that, I asked Jamar right after the deal didn't get done, what's your confidence level and trust in the front office and ownership? And he said, I love the coaching staff. And that's typically a pretty telling answer. Now, from a communication standpoint, there are things we know and things we don't. Very important context you brought up. The Bengals went to him and told Chase they were interested and they wanted to get a deal done this offseason. That's significant.
Chase said in his own words, their final offer was them, quote, bending over backwards. That's significant. Well, why couldn't the Bengals go a little more towards Chase's side? Or why didn't Chase accept a deal that maybe didn't quite have all the bells and whistles structure-wise that he was looking for? How come every other, and I mean every other star receiver is able to get a deal done with their, how come every other team has made this work except for the Bengals? There are 2 star receivers between 2019 and 2021 who have been drafted who haven't gotten long-term deals, and that's Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. How come everywhere else it's working and in Cincinnati it's not? I don't know who to blame. I don't want to place blame. I don't know that that's fair for me to do. But clearly there's just some disconnect somewhere when everyone else except for you can do something.
I will ask you, is this somehow impacting what we're seeing in terms of the product on the field? I think it's really hard to divorce the two. I don't want to oversell that, but I don't want to undersell it either. What say you?
I think in week 1, it did significantly. I think there were opportunities that if it were, week 12 of the 2023 season, they, against the Patriots, would have had this wrinkle and that wrinkle and this screen and that motion, and all of that would have been in place. But Chase looked like a guy on the previous Sunday against New England, looked like a guy who hadn't practiced in terms of they kept it, I don't want to say simple, but it was Chase runs some of the most complex game plan stuff in the NFL. It was not what we're accustomed to seeing. I think you saw a real impact at the time of this.
In light of all of this, I'm going to give some credit to Zach Taylor. I'm going to give some credit to the organization, because quietly what we're seeing is the emergence of Andre Yoshivash that could – you and I both know if we were buying stock in a player, his would be like Google. It'd be like Amazon stock, right? Talk to us about what the Bengals are finding out, at least these first couple of weeks, and maybe with the other assets they have at the wide receiver position.
Well, the beauty of what he did on Sunday, catching 2 touchdowns, was the 2 touchdowns, while they were both goal line situations, couldn't have been more different. The first was just pure raw athleticism on a back shoulder ball, kind of a comeback route near the sideline on a short goal line play where Andre Yoshivash looked like a heptathlete, which he is.
Yes, which he is.
Now, the second touchdown was instincts. My understanding of that play was Yoshivash was supposed to cut across the back line, but he read what the leverage was, and he made this move to pivot back on a dime like he was doing a Michael Jackson dance move or something, and that was all instincts and anticipation. Burrow, seeing that unfold goes, wow, he got open a lot quicker than I thought and had better instincts than you normally expect in that moment. The most exciting part about Yoshivash, too, is he's making an impact, exceeding expectations for a 6th-round pick. We haven't even seen what the Bengals' plan was to use him this year. He spent basically all of training camp working in the slot. The plan was Chase and Higgins on the outside, Yoshivash in the slot, and because Higgins hasn't played yet, we haven't even seen the vision of the offense that the coaching staff expected to enter the 2024 season with. So now I don't know that Yoshivash is going to have an 800-yard season. I don't know that he'll be the explosive play guy, but he has proven to be, I'll call him an elite role player. Which for a 6th-round pick is the exact type of stuff that you need.
Joe Burrow certainly has a lot of confidence in him. How much more confidence does he now have in Jermaine Burton? They dialed up a deep shot. It's the biggest play so far the Bengals season from scrimmage. How much more is that coming together? Something tells me they're going to need more of Jermaine Burton on those vertical pass routes.
Well, the Bengals drafted Jermaine Burton to beat the Chiefs, and it only took, as bad as his training camp was, it still showed up in week 2. There's 100% some truth to that. In 2022, the AFC title game, what do the Chiefs do all the time? Double chase, double T. They were out here running plays for Trenton Irwin with the season on the line against one of the best defenses in the league, and Hayden Hurst as well, and they just couldn't get open. And there was no way to put fear in defenses that were doubling Chase and Higgins. And it showed up again last year when the Bengals played the Chiefs. They said, we need a guy who can defeat handsy, aggressive press man coverage. And while his deep ball wasn't technically press man coverage, still his ability to get downfield, eat up yards, and just make instinctual plays on the ball on kind of a contested catch or a go route situation. Like, Tyler Boyd was a better player than Burton is now. Tyler Boyd couldn't do that. Trent Irwin couldn't do that. Hayden Hurst couldn't do that. They haven't had that. They felt like they needed that against the Chiefs. And if Jermaine is already doing this, even though he probably doesn't have the full trust of Burrow and the coaching staff yet, to run the entirety of the offense that they'll need him to run down the road, the fact that he's already doing that, that's a very promising sign.
Before we let you go, one last question. Charlie Goldsmith, Cincinnati Bengals Inquirer, doing an excellent job. How concerned are you about the Bengals starting their third straight season at 0-2?
I think this is the best 0-2 they've had. Now, that's not nobody wants to be 0-2, but in 2022, at this point of the year, everyone was shouting, the Bengals can't throw the ball deep, Burrow can't throw the ball deep, and Tampa 2 coverages are going to take over the Bengals defense. And there was some reason for concern there. And on top of that, Burrow had lost like 20 pounds coming off the appendectomy, and he didn't look well. At this point, week 2 coming off last season, Burrow tweaked his calf. He hops on Mike Brown's golf cart. Mike Brown says, you're not playing this week. Burrow talks his way into the game in week 3 against the Rams, and he can't move, and he's just out here doing everything. And they win 19-16 on a day where Burrow can't move. So Burrow can move. He looked good, not great against the Chiefs. That's kind of exciting, too, that there's still more room for him to grow. They have momentum coming out of that game. And, again, it was a disappointing loss, but that was – the best week 2 game the Bengals have played really during Zach Taylor's career, actually. So, again, 0-2 is 0-2, but there's a lot to build on.
Charlie Goldsmith, great work. Keep it up. It's always great to have you on Bleav in Bengal podcast. You bring so much to the show. We greatly appreciate you. Take care, my friend, and we'll see you soon, okay?
Talk to you soon.
Of course, this segment is our Performer of the Week segment. It's brought to you by French Creek. French Creek Roofing, Greater Cincinnati's choice for roofing, windows, and siding. Our Performer of the Week is none other than Trey Hendrickson. You know why? He was putting in work on Sunday against the Kansas City Chiefs. 2 sacks on the day, 6 total pressures. He had a 32% win rate, according to PFF. That means 32% of the time when he rushed the quarterback, he was winning. And 3 hurries in the game. More importantly, I think he forced about 3 holding penalties against the Kansas City Chiefs, which derailed many of their drives before they ever got started. No one works harder than Trey Hendrickson to get to the opposing quarterback. Trey, we love you, man. We want to see you in Bengal stripes forever. We'll be back with more on Bleav in Bengal podcast right here, right after this. This is our look ahead segment to the Week 3 contest on Monday night against the Washington Commanders. Of course, it's brought to you by Midwest Hospice. If you're dealing in the final days of a loved one, it could be difficult. It could be overwhelming. Well, allow the trusted caregivers at Midwest Hospice to help, serving Greater Cincinnati for the last 10 years. Look, it's going to be a game against the Washington Commanders. Right now, we're not taking anybody for granted. We got to get our first win of the season. I don't care who it comes against. There are no homecoming games. This is the National Football League. And one of the top young quarterbacks, Jaden Daniels, is going to be quarterbacking the Washington Commanders. It's going to be a big night at Paycor Stadium because the great Tim Crumry is going into the Bengals Ring of Honor. The great Corey Dillon, clock-killing Corey Dillon's coming back to Cincinnati. Remember when he left here saying that he didn't want to play for us anymore? Well, all is good. He's welcomed back into our good graces. We love Corey Dillon. There's no doubt about it. We love Tim Crumry, one of the baddest dudes I ever played with. I'm going to tell you right now, this guy is John Wayne in cleats. He's got the cowboy hat, the cowboy boots, and nobody worked harder or played harder than the great Tim Crumry. Please come down and join us, everyone. I'm looking forward to this. We got to get our first win against the Washington Commanders team that's going to be feisty. All right, come down and join us, everyone, at Paycor Stadium for the Monday night game. You are listening and watching the Bleav in Bengal podcast on Bally Sports Ohio. Don't forget to join us again next week, everyone.